There we go. All right, everybody, welcome to Talking Real Estate, Champions Real Estate Team at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner, the second team leader here at Champions Real Estate Team. So every Wednesday, we jump on here with Russ Williams from Williams Mortgage, and we kind of touch on what's gone on in the real estate market over the last week, keep everyone up to date. So thank you for joining us. And if you like us, share us, subscribe on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, basically all the other fun social media things that are out there. But we just try to reach as many people as we can to educate them and get them up to speed on what the market's doing. So we'll jump straight into it here. New listings as of the last 7 days, we've had 565 new listings, 370 new contracts written, and 560 happy new homeowner. Hopefully they're happy new homeowners. So contracts and listings going up. So what we're seeing, is obviously a lot more listings coming on than we are seeing new contracts written. So which is good from a buyer's perspective. We are kind of seeing the market slow down just a little bit, but we'll touch a little bit more into that in just a second. But let's share the kind of 30,000 foot view perspective here. So we are over the 2,000 mark for the first time in about a year or so when I was looking back at the last numbers. So congratulations to the Omaha and Lincoln MLS. So in Douglas, Sarpy County, so the closer to the Omaha metro area, we are basically at 1,132. Existing homes are just over 600, so we're hitting a new threshold there. And then new construction, 526, so pretty common there. Months of inventory went up a little bit. So like I said, we're kind of seeing in general as the market just slowed down a little bit, but I'll kind of get more into what we mean by that. So 1.3 months of inventory basically means if we had no more houses come on the market, we would have about a 1.3 month supply of inventory average. Sold price went up from last week. I think it was at 311, went up to 315. And that's up 13% from July of last year. So we're kind of taking a look at what the market's doing. I think we still have kind of we're still definitely in a seller's market from an inventory standpoint. I just think the demand necessarily isn't out there. And I think that's kind of a culmination of what we're seeing is you kind of have the seller hangover, in my opinion. Just that some of the sellers are still reading the press clippings from a couple months ago that things are flying off the shelf. They're getting 15, 20 offers on houses, so they're saying, well, let's just price it high and we're going to get it. And I'm seeing a lot of price reductions just coming across our emails of agents all over the city. It's very common. I think it's kind of funny that, it survived the weekend. Well, they've been surviving a lot of weekends here over the last couple weeks, about a month or so. We've seen a lot of those listings come up. So I think that taking a look at, you have to look at the big picture. Working with my current clients now, we're seeing houses that, a month ago, 2 months ago, would have probably sold for that listing price or a little bit more, but they're on the market over the weekend. And when you're kind of coaching back and forth is from a seller's perspective, you got to price it accordingly. Like we've said in weeks prior, that if someone wrote you a check for the house today, would you be happy with it? And you got to take into account that the appreciation has been built into those prices pretty much already. When we do those market analysis, and we're pulling comps, sold houses were houses that, were typically written 45 to 60 days ago. So 2 months ago when the height of the market, well, if the market slows down, those numbers need to be adjusted accordingly. And we don't have a crystal ball, but that's kind of what we're looking at from that perspective. And so when you're going in as a buyer in this market, if they're still pricing the houses at that 60-day mark, 60 days ago, and they've survived the weekend, and now the sellers are kind of getting, well, we're going to keep it there. Someone will buy it. Well, it's one of those that you may have a house that's, I don't know, let's use a 300,000, and there may be a house that's at 280 just below it. But it's maybe, the 300 house is just a little bit better. But if you drop that house, say you drop a price down to 290 and, that house is still at 380, those people are more than likely going to go look at both houses and they're going to go, for $10,000 more, I can get this house. Whereas at $20,000 more, they weren't necessarily ready to get there. But if you kind of get to that point where that 280 house drops it before you drop it, you're kind of like, oh man, that house looks like it's way overpriced, when it's really necessarily not. But in the eyes of the beholder, the buyer, there kind of is just that mental game of those buyers have been in the marketplace, more than likely for a little while, and they've seen, or their agent, hopefully they're working with an experienced agent that has been through the last couple of years and even just the last couple of months of what we're seeing in a large perspective from that regard. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to take a look at it. And if it's been on the market for a little bit, maybe you can offer them a little less. Now, if you're going to come in, at that $300,000 house, for example, and you're going to offer them 260 or 275 or 275, that may not necessarily warm the oven very much, because they're not going to want to bake the bread. They're just going to let you say, well, it's a seller's market, because in the mindset, you have to look at the scouting report of what that seller is thinking, and what press clippings they're reading. Because if they're reading the Omaha World Herald, great newspaper, but that data a lot of times is a month old of what they're seeing. So it's like, talk to an agent that's working in the market day in and day out, and formulate a good solid offer, because most of the agents, I would say, understand what's going on and is trying to translate that to your sellers, to your buyers, of what's going. Because I've had some buyers, let's go above it, so we can get it. Well, you know what? Let's call the agent, see where it's at. Have they had a lot of activity? Do they have a lot of interest? Because maybe you would pay a little bit more, because that's what's been customary lately. But it's going back to the mind shift of what's going on in the market and being educated and know exactly what's going on. And that's what we do, here at Champions Real Estate, is educate you on, does it make sense to make this offer? Because our goal, has always been, is to get you a seat at the table, especially when we're a multiple offer situation, that you can say yes or say no. Yes, it's a great offer. No, let's wait. Maybe they'll come down a little bit, or maybe that buyer will come up a little bit, and it's ultimately, at the end of the day, the buyer wants to buy the house, the seller wants to sell the house. What's going to be formulate and be the best, essentially for both worlds, that's going to be a fair offer, because there still are multiple offers that are going on out there. And if they're priced accordingly, they're up to snuff, they're updated, those type of things. But if you got one of the houses that, we could paint a little bit and do a little bit of kind of, easier kind of fixes, but you decide not to, because it's still a seller's market, which it is, those houses may sit and get the survive the weekend email that goes out to all the agents in the MLS. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing in the marketplace. I guess Russ and I were just kind of talking before we got on, just kind of what's going on in the mortgage world. So I kind of let him cover that side of it, but we'll jump into that. So Russ, how's things going with you in your neck of the woods?
Mark, interest rates have treaded water fairly well over the last week. We do expect there will be some continued volatility. Just this morning, the CPI report, which is the Consumer Price Index, came out a lot hotter than expected. And of course, we're sitting at 40-year highs for inflation and likely poised to go a little bit higher. That's usually a negative thing for the mortgage rate market. However, having said that, to the point that you mentioned earlier, Mark, real estate prices, folks, are driven by supply and demand. Demand meaning how many buyers are out there, supply meaning how many homes are available. And certainly interest rates factor into that. As interest rates rise, typically that is going to push some people out of being able to afford homes that they might like to buy. So if you still can't afford the home that you want to buy, this is a great time to marry the house, and you're just dating the rate. Based upon what we're seeing with inflation, the Fed has no choice but to stomp on the brakes at the next few meetings to try to bring inflation back down and under control. What that is likely to do is to kick a recession. And we've talked about in previous weeks, Mark, that in recessionary periods, interest rates have dropped. At the same time, home values have remained stable. Think about it this way. If as long as you have your job, if interest rates drop, that means you can likely afford more home. And so for that reason, that might increase demand for real estate, thereby keeping prices somewhat stable or maybe even continuing on an upward climb. So there's a window of opportunity here for you that if you're looking to buy a house, I encourage you to visit with Mark and his team and make sure that you have all the information you need to make the best decision for you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. Yeah, marry the house, date the rate. I mean, that's a good analogy that hopefully some people may understand. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's a fantastic time, because next year, I would assume prices are going to go. Ultimately, we don't have a crystal ball, but they have historically gone up 3 to 4%. This, as we see, the average sold price this month is up 13% from the previous month. I was just doing a market analysis on a neighborhood, kind of in Elkhorn, and they're up 22% in that one particular neighborhood. So it just depends on where you're at, area, price point, all that kind of fun stuff. But historically, like you said, with that recession, if people are going to be able to go out and buy, and you got a secure job and things of that sort, and you're doing well. But Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add. That's kind of our short, sweet, to the point, but
If you're not following Mark on his webpage, he posts lots of good information, folks. So as you're trying to put together that information, don't just believe what the rumor mill tells you. Look at hard data. Make sure you follow Mark on his webpage and his team. There's great data out there. It can help you make the best decision.
yeah, and a lot of like a lot of stuff, the articles that you're finding online are national articles, and that's a great perspective of what's going on, but you really got to get down to the street view. I mean, for what's happening in a particular neighborhood, because it depends. It bounces around all over the place. So, and that's why we got understanding what's going on in the market, on the streets basically. So, but appreciate you jumping on with us again, Russ. And as always, if you guys have any questions, give us a holler. My number's on here on the video. You can see here 402-672-7670, or give Russ a holler 290-8936. We're happy to help you. And we'll talk to everybody next week. Have a great weekend.